What's going on, everyone? Welcome to cartoon season. I forgot the name of the show for a second. I am Tyler, and this is where we talk about animated things. Today we got a good one for you, modern day classic here, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Incredible film. Probably, it's always tough to pick one because there's so many good ones, but this may be definitely in the running for my favorite animated movie of all time. You know what I mean? This is just incredible. It's too good. But we're gonna try to put it into words today. So if that's even possible. So do want to talk about a few things. I do want to talk about the art style itself. Obviously, a huge piece of why this film is amazing. Also want to touch on how they were able to put a lot of villains into this film, but it's not confusing. Which is not an easy thing to do. Other Spider-Man movies, in fact, have tried and failed. And it's like, man, you should just focus on one, maybe two villains instead of 4, 5, or 6, And then finally, I do want to talk about how much the other Spider people push Miles into becoming great. Because that is also one of the touchstones, one of the cornerstones for, the emotional impact of this film. So, but yeah, a few things there. Before I get into it, make sure to go to the Tiger T YouTube channel or other podcast services and listen to more episodes there. Have a good time. We talk about animation every Monday. I always forget to say that. Every Monday. Sometimes you get some bonus ones, but every Monday. So, but let us start into the art style itself. Art style itself is incredible. It is a mix of 2D and 3D. Both literally and visually, if that makes sense. 3D and 2D elements are obviously played in throughout the entire film, but then a lot of the 3D is used to look 2D. Not the first thing to ever do it, but I feel like this is the most popular example. The first / most popular example in just mainstream media. Because there's obviously other things. I mean, like, Arcane just came out recently, and I know the Arcane came out years after Spider-Verse, but Arcane was doing it. Arcane was in development before Spider-Verse was, I mean, it doesn't matter who's first, but, like, this style isn't credited to Spider-Verse. It only is by a lot of people because they feel like this is the first thing to ever do it. But I mean, there's older stuff too. I mean, stuff in the past, like years and years ago, I mean, has used 3D and 2D elements together. It's just that this is Spider-Man, so it gets rakes in the big bucks. Even though it's the least grossing Spider-Man movie that exists by far, I think too. That's because it's a cartoon. People don't like cartoons, apparently. But some other examples of why the art style is amazing, not just the mixture of 2D and 3D. There's speech bubbles, which do get used sometimes when people are speaking, but when they use them for thoughts, I think that's incredible. So like, a big example is when Miles is still kind of getting his powers and he's really confused, and this is after I think this is after he messes with Gwen Stacy. Gets like the hair and all that out of her, like he's all confused, and so like speech bubbles, or like thought bubbles I should say, are kind of like forming around him, and that's kind of his like inner thoughts. He's like freaking out, so it shows there, instead of just having the voiceover, which I think is really cool. Just adds to the comic book feel of it. And then we have certain effects. I mean, there's a million different effects, but one of the ones I really like is the visible Spidey sense. Whenever the little squiggles come out of the head, it's really cool. Because it's just little touches like that I feel like the animators, the illustrators, the designers, all that stuff. Everyone that works on this film. They kind of put little touches into every moment, every screen cap, that just makes this film above and beyond, because little things they didn't have to do. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to have a scene with speech bubbles and all that stuff. They didn't have to. The movie still would have been great, but it's little, polishing that I think, really sets this apart from other movies that have attempted to do stuff similar to this. We also have the comic books as transitions, which is really cool. Again, it's been done before, but even so, like the turning of a page, or like zooming out and you seeing that the screen you're watching is a panel in a comic, and then it moves over to another panel and zooms in. Again, something that's been done before, but this movie mixture of the art style fully committing to a comic book feel, I think that this is the best use of transitions like that. And then also introducing backstories, the way they would throw a comic book on the screen and it would be, the Peter B. Parker or whatever, and then Gwen Stacy, and then, Spider Pig, and then the other ones, Noir, Spider-Man, and all that stuff, and it all being in their own style, and, it telling the backstory, and it not, us not taking 15 minutes for every character to know their backstory, because that is kind of the joke, or like, one of the jokes of all these characters, that like we already know the story, there's little things here and there that we don't know that obviously separate each character and make them all unique, but for the most part we don't have to spend all this time on everyone's backstory, because it's not, all the little details aren't important. The fun details that separate themselves are really cool, but that's really what it is used to accentuate. It's not like, again, we've even on a grander scale, we've seen Spider-Man before, a million times, not only in films but in comics, obviously, and shows and everything. So like, we don't need to hear everyone's backstory, even if they are different. We get the gist. Let's move on to what this movie is about. Then even the different Spideys, I already kind of was touching on that, but every Spider-Man looks different. Very greatly. You have like the Spider Ham, right? Isn't that what his name is? Spider Ham. Him very much resembling more so a Golden Age cartoon style. And then you have Noir, which is black and white, obviously, more of like a dark, like a true crime drama type thing. And then you have the other one, Penny Parker, who was more anime. So I really like not just flexing on the just general art style of the film, but they also did different ones and did them all very well. It didn't feel like a parody. It felt like they were keeping true to what each tone was supposed to be for each character. And when you bring them all together, it doesn't look weird. It's like, oh, this is Spider-Verse of different characters, but they all mesh very well together. Which again, another great accomplishment, But yeah, that's kind of everything. Again, you could go through frame by frame with this film and talk about, at least one thing about every frame, but those things are kind of the things that kind of, stick out in my mind and why I feel like this is just incredible to look at. I feel like even if the story of this film wasn't good, I still think it would be regarded very highly and still be a very important film for people who want to get into animation or even just art in general, to still study, it visually, even if the story wasn't good. But the story is good, and we can move on to the villains segment. So my whole thing here is that there's a lot of villains in this film, but I feel like they make them all work. There are other movies, like I said, other Spider movies, even like Spider-Man 3, the Raimi film. What did we have? We had Sandman, Venom, what's his name? The Hobgoblin. I know there's more. I know there's at least one more that I'm missing. Venom, Sandman, Hobgoblin. I think there's one more, isn't there? I don't know. But like, it's just too many, and they introduce them in that film too. Like it's one thing to like, I guess this is opposite, but when you think of something like Infinity War, right? We're gonna touch on heroes instead of villains here, but they don't introduce any heroes in Infinity War. because there's no point. We already have built up all these other heroes, all these other main characters. So now they're coming into one film. And yeah, you may not know each and every one. Maybe you didn't watch every MCU film. That's fine. Disney doesn't need more money. But they still were all built up. So like, you're not like, oh wait, who's Scarlet Witch again? Like, no, we've seen her in, at that point, at least 2 films, I think. Age of Ultron and Civil War. I think we've seen her, and I think that was it. So we know a little bit about who she is. Obviously we know now more because we've seen Infinity War and Endgame and WandaVision, right? Multiverse of Madness coming up very soon. But like, we knew about all of them, so we had a connection to them, and we weren't confused, and we weren't still trying to fall in love with the character. Whereas like with Spider-Man 3, the issue was that, yeah, we already kind of knew about the Hobgoblin, but Sandman and Venom were completely new. So it's like, why are we still bringing up new characters in the 3rd film, and they're starting and ending there? Doesn't make any sense. But to swing back around to this film, they do it very well. We got Doc Ock introduced as the scientist there, and we immediately know her motivations. We immediately know we sympathize with her for a little bit because of how dangerous she deems everything as, and she's even talking to Kingpin like, hey, like, this may not be ready, like we still have more work to do, but she's a scientist, is what she does. And then I just mentioned Kingpin. We made to learn his motivations. Well, not immediately, but we eventually do, and we know it's for the family. We got Scorpion, who don't really know too much about him, but he's there, and he matches with the cavalry that is all the spider people. He was never meant to be an important villain in this film, but he is there enough to make the fight scenes interesting. So we weren't scratching our heads on who this is, because the film doesn't really deem it of any importance. We have the Prowler, who is introduced, and he is Miles' uncle. We got a little bit of his motivation. We got a little bit of his turn at the end, where he doesn't end up, capturing or killing Miles, and then he ends up dying, and that adds to Miles' character. Like, introduced in one film and died in the same film is usually not cool, but the little bits that we've gotten from him and how throughout the film it matched with who Miles was trying to be and how he was kind of fighting with his dad on that, and then him dying and him finally realizing who he is and what he needs to do, it makes sense. It's perfect. Green Goblin. Was Green Goblin in this? Oh yeah, we see a little bit of Green Goblin in the very beginning. We see him at the end. Again, he was another one that wasn't really built up as someone. Again, it wasn't like other, Spider-Man 3, not to just talk bad about that film, but like, it wasn't that it was built up and now we need to know him and now we know he's important and we need to know the backstory. It's just like, no, he's just like Scorpion, where he's like another villain that's been thrown in here. We know Spider-Man has existed for a while, so we know that there is the backstory that, he is already an established villain. So that's just, they were able to do that cleverly by just making people like Scorpion and Green Goblin more background characters, and even someone like Tombstone more of a background character. We're not given their entire life story because we've more than likely already heard it in this universe. Spider-Man, the one that unfortunately died, has already heard it. He's already been fighting these guys for a while. This movie used half of its villains as just building out the world and for the atmosphere, while the other half, we learned a little bit more about them. And I think that was a perfect way to do it. And they also did it in a way that didn't seem like they were just throwing fodder. Because then you look at something like X-Men, like something like X-Men 3, where we see all these mutants and they're just dying left and right. And it's like, oh, that guy looks cool. Oh, he's dead. Oh, I guess we'll never know more about him. Where those were literally just like, it was just dust. It didn't even matter. So yeah, I think again, just that is another thing I think this movie does really well, where the villains, all the characters that they juggle in this movie, it it never feels like too much. Like, yeah, there's certain villains and even certain spider people that I would love to have seen more of, but I wasn't like sad that I didn't get to. I wasn't like, oh, that was a missed opportunity. I was like, oh no, everyone filled their role exactly how they were supposed to, which isn't usually the case. You know, especially for movies that try to take on as much as this one does. It's not usually the case. It's usually like, why did they put this character in here? You know what I mean? But I think this movie juggles it all very well. And then more so touching on how this story is incredible, the final segment of the other spider people pushing Miles. They were essential. You know, I think if the other people didn't come here, I don't know that Miles would have been the hero that he turned out to be. You know, because obviously he got bit by the spider, and that was gonna, you know, that happened without anyone else. But everyone else here gave something to Miles that helped him, you know, actually turn into, you know, Miles Morales, you know, Spider-Man of this world. And so, some examples. They're the only ones he can really learn from. I think that's an obvious one. You know, and it sucks because we do see other people, you know, especially someone like Gwen Stacy, who even mentions that she had to learn everything on her own. You know, she didn't have anyone to teach her. So the fact that we have someone like Miles who has literally, 5 other spider people to learn from. I mean, he's destined to be the best of us all. You know, you know, he really starts to feel it after they steal the computer from Doc Ock. You know, that right there, very somewhat of a simple mission, but him even getting some experience from Peter and then you know, a little bit from Gwen, like there wasn't any other opportunity to like save the day, you know, and now he's been handed one, and with that he grows. You know, he grows into a spider person, grows into Miles Morales, learns, you know, gets it very quickly on how to use his web to swing around, and also shows a little bit of his own powers, how he can like turn invisible, you know, like there's little inklings there of greatness. You know, there's a moment, most of it actually, where he can't do any of his cool powers on command, which is unfortunate, you know what I mean? Like, but again, without them pushing him and them almost like berating him a little bit, he would have never been able to get over that hump. You know, he would have never been able to. He would have just been frustrated forever, and then I don't know, would have never tried his other powers ever again. Because why would I? You know, there's no point. I keep trying and you know, there would be no one there to give him some outside perspective. And then he does get washed in the big clash at Aunt May's house. Yeah, he isn't really, not too helpful. I mean, that's really his first big fight. I mean, even with his thing with the Doc Ock laboratory, didn't really fight too much, more so just escaping. But with Aunt May and all the whole kerfuffle of all these villains, all these heroes, like, he doesn't really have a place to fit in with all of them. He doesn't really have any fighting experience. He can't do any of his powers on command, like I just said. You know, and then that right there just even demoralizes him more, because that was his opportunity to do something, you know. They end up tying Miles to a chair and they go fight Kingpin. You know, because they even say, like, we know you're going to try to help, but we've seen you try to help and you've done nothing. It's not your fault, but you just don't have any experience, whereas we are super experienced and like we've been doing this forever, it feels like. And you know Peter even kind of goats him a little bit, and he's just like, well then fine, get out of that chair, shock me with your magic shock powers and escape, you know, and then you'll prove to me that you're ready. And he can't do it, you know. And again, this is probably the lowest moment for Peter. I mean, maybe aside from his uncle dying, but like, this is a low moment where it's like, there's nothing he can do. He feels helpless, and he feels like he's caused this as well. And then he grows into his spider shoes. And he has a cool rooftop scene. Yeah, that is the iconic scene from this film. Where again, he learns what he has to do. He finally grows into himself. And everything works out. Because with this, it was more of a mental thing. It was more him getting over these mental hurdles and realizing what he had to do. Realizing how he actually could help. Not just rushing into everything, but actually learning. And then he joins all the spider people, and he can do his cool powers on command. So everything's coming up miles at this point. He can turn invisible. He can do the shock thing. Like he's here. He is an essential part of this team, and he's gonna help. He's gonna save the day. And then even at the end, he knows that he must be the one to stay behind and use the flash drive. Not only did he grow as a hero in terms of physical abilities, but he's also there knowing that, he has to do the hero thing. He has to be the one to stay behind. He lets everyone else leave, and he has to plug it in while there's still danger afoot. Not many people, especially someone his age and someone with his inexperience, would be able to catch that so quickly. But he does, and he ends up saving the day and everything, which is great. But again, this is all due to the people around him, because in my opinion, if he didn't have everyone else here, what would he have done? He would have learned to web sling. Like, all this stuff would have taken so much more time. Like, I imagine it did happen for everyone else here, because no one else had a mentor. No one else had someone that was just like them. So again, he's built for success at this point. He can do things that other people can't do. So everyone being there, Peter being there at the beginning, being that gateway, and then Gwen being there and being more his age and being to relate to certain things more, and then the other group coming in and solidifying that we are special, and we are all destined to be heroes. You can do it too, but it's gonna be tough, and them all maybe being a little more aggressive than they had to in the beginning, but I think that all was more kind of tough love sort of thing, and being like, war is happening like tomorrow. So we're doing this for you. Like, if you are not ready, then we cannot let you come in, no matter how much of a hero you want to be. Like, we don't want to see you get killed. and that's just it, But yeah, I think that's the end. Again, the art style of this film is obviously incredible, but the story itself is really good. Miles himself is a very relatable character. And it's just cool to see all the other spider people, I do also want to mention that at this point, yes, Across the Spider-Verse has already been announced. It's going to be 2 parts, apparently. Well, I don't know if we know that. It just has part 1. I guess it could be more than 2 parts. Very strange for them to do more than 2 parts, but that's there. I don't have too much to say about that. We have seen the trailer. It looks really cool. Seems like they're going to do a million more art styles, a million more animation techniques in that one. And it's going to be crazy. So I'm very excited for that as well. But please let me know, obviously, what you think of this movie. Where it ranks in your all-time list. I feel like this very quickly became a lot of people's favorites. Yeah, I guess that's it. Also, let me know any sort of predictions. I don't really go into predictions because I don't really know predictions you can do for Across the Spider-Verse, but let me know what any of your predictions are for that as well, because I think that film could go in a lot of places. So also let me know what art style do you want to see, because I feel like everything's on the table at this point. So like, even people have been wondering about, hey, what if there's a live action element, because Sony is definitely trying to mix this into the rest of their Sony's properties. So like, are we gonna see like Tom Holland or something, or Tom Hardy, or I don't know about that, but let me know what art style you'd like to see. It'd be cool if we see some crazy like what's the art, like the old stuff from like the 1930s and stuff. That like the rubber hose animation. What if we see a little thing of that? That'll be cool. But yeah, and that's it. Like I said, please go to the Tiger T YouTube channel or other podcast services to check out more episodes. Until next time, let me know what other movies, cartoons, anime, anything like that you want to see me discuss on here.